Good morning and welcome to another Tuesday Tour. It's John Sautter and Michael Fairchild behind the camera from your Purdue Alumni Association. Today we're coming to you from the corner of State Street and Airport Road, actually Airport and McCormick, where one changes to the other, because there's just some great things to see here. We're going to go from the historical and swing our way all around the corner and talk about the brand new under construction that's going on. So a lot of interesting things to see here today as we talk about Squirrel Park and Mary Student Housing. Then we'll cross the street and talk about the Purdue West Shopping Center. Sure to bring back some memories, I think, for some of you. Then we'll cross the street and talk about Horticulture Park, perhaps more memories there for all of you. And then we'll finish by talking what's going on across the street. You may be able to even hear the construction noise going on, but it's a brand new construction project underway for a residential community very close to campus. Very interesting things to see. So let's start with Squirrel Park. Squirrel Park behind me, many of you may be familiar with that. Purdue has a lot of squirrels. We knew April always had a squirrel story to tell, and some of you might have one. Squirrel Park is associated with married student housing. And so married student housing, let's talk about that just a little bit. Married student housing goes back to the late 50s, early 60s, when the campus was growing significantly. World War II had ended much before that, but then the Korean War ended. Purdue was growing. We were actually growing by several thousand students every year. And so R.B. Stewart and the higher level folks decided we really have to get rid of some of the temporary housing, start building some permanent housing, and we need to focus on married couples and families. And so they started building married student housing. Married student housing was built in several phases, about 90% built in phase 2 in the early 60s or so. The focus was to have 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, furnished and unfurnished, for these students. And we built 1,244 of those apartments, largest family housing operation in the country at the time. And so those have been here since the 50s. And of course what has happened, they've been here since the 50s, they're starting to wear out, and they aren't all that attractive looking from the road. And so I'm afraid time has caught up with them, and so some projects are underway to kind of replace most of them. Discovery Park, when it arrived here in the early 2000s or so, started coming west with a lot of research facilities, and pretty soon married student housing was impacted, and eventually it's all going to be going away. It's just down to just a few hundred right now. So married student housing, again, welcoming back the GIs, and so Bill Fleetemeyer was in charge of that. R.B. Stewart put him in charge of that, and Bill Fleetemeyer is a retired military veteran, and so they named the streets after World War II heroes. And so we have Nimitz Drive and Arnold Drive, Marshall Drive, and Halsey Drive, just another way to make the returning veterans feel a little bit more comfortable. But as they did that, then they included Squirrel Park. They needed a place for a playground for the children, and they needed some recreation, some picnic area, and so it was put in here. And it has served its purpose very well. It will be sticking around. Most of the rest is going away with the Discovery Park District as it continues to expand in this particular direction. But it really has served its purpose. In fact, I know from the housing folks and even the campus in general, it's really an unsung hero, because it housed that particular population. But as the campus housing population continued to adjust, and we had more single students and we had more single graduate students, we had to be flexible and find space. We could do that in married student housing. Eventually the name became Purdue Village, as it had so high percentage of international students as well as a high percent of graduate students, and so it became known as Purdue Village, and it really offered all the things for that particular population. So we had a co-op nursery, we had food pantries, we had English as a second language. We had so many spouses needing help with their English that we actually started an English as a second language, became one of the largest second language operations actually in the greater Lafayette area. We even had spouses from some of the executives at Subaru Zuzu across the river who would come here, very, very popular at that particular time. And then we also had garden plots available. And so the international students, quite often parents would come for the summer and grow vegetables they were used to. And if that wasn't possible, they'd send them the seeds and they could actually grow those particular plants. In fact, faculty and staff could rent a plot out there. In fact, I did several years, and very memorable that having a plot next to a couple from Korea and Korean lettuce that particular summer, because we'd always share our vegetables and that sort of thing. So just a great story, and I suspect maybe some of you have stories also. If you lived in building 13910 or 20215, something like that, most students who lived here can tell you the building and the apartment number that they actually lived in. But again, Squirrel Park will continue to exist. It'll be configured a little bit differently as a part of this whole development that's taking place out on this corner of campus. So now we're going to journey across the street and talk about the Purdue West Shopping Center. We'll see you over there. Okay, we've crossed the street and we're in front of the Purdue Service Center, as it was first known in the late 1950s or so when it was built. Later changed the name to Purdue West, which is what it's known as today. But to give a nice perspective, as you look down State Street redevelopment really had State Street shaped up very nicely. And again, in the distance, you see a lot of the Discovery Park District, as it's adding a lot of facility space, a lot of housing out to this part of campus. And so the Purdue Service Center opened up in the late 50s or so. R.B. Stewart's concept was that the Research Foundation needed to buy and build something in this location for the families that would be coming in, and as campus was starting to expand, we needed a variety of retail operations available to them. And so it's been that way. And so some of you may recall many of the stores that have been here. Follett's Bookstore, of course, was the anchor, and it's been there many years, still is. But as I walk through the list, maybe you remember some and others. Baskin and Robin, 31 Flavors used to be here. McDonald's was here for a long time. Right behind me, this used to be the Thriftway grocery store, and today it's a Center for Healthy Living. Basically, it's the health center for our faculty and staff. Down this line, we had Mad Rushroom for a while. Now we have Papa John's Pizza. The Purdue Federal Credit Union had a branch here. There was a laundromat. Seattle Beanery, a wonderful little cafe that served breakfast and lunch, was located there. And out from them were their Cameo theaters, Cameo 1 and 2. Theaters that would seat, I think, over 400 people in those two theaters combined. They opened in around the early 70s, they closed in the 90s, and I bet some of you saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show in those theaters right over there. Continuing around, Pizza Hut used to be here, now we have Subway. University Spirit was there, it is now gone. Vino's was a pizza operation that was there, a place called Tops and Tans for haircuts and tans. I think I used to get my hair cut there once in a while. There was a record shop, LMG, Lick My Groove, was a record store that was there for many years. And on it goes, all the variety of things that were available here. This will continue for a short while, but I think down the road there are some plans to adjust it also. We're not quite sure what those are exactly. But the Purdue Service Center, a spot that I'm sure you have frequented during your time here. So now we're going to cross the street and talk about Hort Park. Okay, now we are actually looking across the street at kind of an empty spot, but we're going to fill that in. What used to be in the empty lots over here, if we go way back, was the Wabash Valley Nursery. Some of you might recall that. Wabash Valley Nursery has morphed into a variety of other places in town, but it was here for a while. Eventually the university purchased it, and it's been vacant for some time, but really behind that, behind the line of trees, is Horticulture Park. And we're going to be showing you some video now as Michael and I take a little venture through Horticulture Park down the road. And just to remind you all, it's still there. It's just under 30 acres. There's over 300 different types of trees and shrubs and plants and that sort of thing. Quite often when a building on campus is going to have vegetation relocated, they put it out here. And so it's continued to grow over the years, and it's still here. It's so nice to have a park like this available right adjacent to campus, a quiet spot to get away. These days we actually have some nice paths that kind of snake their way through there. It's a good time of the year with the trees starting to bloom. Horticulture classes and forestry classes come out on a fairly regular basis. And over the years, a lot of thoughts about it. In fact, at one point, you might have been here when they were going to build a chapel. They were having so many weddings in Hort Park, they thought they'd build a chapel, but that never kind of made the cut. But still very nice. In fact, we're going to pause here and just let this run because we'll show you some nice views and you can just enjoy a little bit of quiet with the birds singing as you look at Hort Park. Okay, we're back and now we're going to turn the corner from what I think you're going to find is a big surprise on what used to be an intramural field behind me. The black intramural field, as it was known in those days, has really changed significantly. In fact, this is where you might have parked your RV for a football game. Certainly a huge intramural program was held here. The cricket club used to have their practices and their games on this field. In fact, we had our garden plots here, located here for married student housing for many years. But again, this is all changing, so this is really the brand new. And so what you see behind me is a new housing development as a part of the Discovery Park District, and it's known as Provenance. I think I'm saying that right, Provenance. And it's going to contain over 550 units for folks to live in. It's going to be apartments and condos and townhouses for single families, multi-family, senior housing. It's really going to be promoted in hopes to attract a variety of folks to a beautiful location just off campus. And it'll be a residential community, so there'll be a community center, and there'll be things to do within the community center. There's going to be a variety of bike paths and walking paths that connect to Squirrel Park that we've talked about previously. And just a very, very interesting development. In fact, if you go to provenance.com and through the Purdue Research Foundation, well, you can see all the things that are be going on with this housing development. Very exciting offering. And so that will change all the area around this particular intersection. And that was one of our motivations today, to kind of show you and talk about what was and what's going to be. So we've gone from the historical, a little bit more historical, to Hort Park, the quiet place, and now this brand new development behind us. And that's what we hope to do with these Tuesday tours, is revive some of those memories that you've had when you were back on campus. And so on behalf of Michael, we hope you find this interesting. We look forward to seeing you again. Hail Purdue!